Okay, it is 9 o'clock on the dot.
Thank you, I'm doing well.
Okay. Today is June the 16th, the year 2021, 9 a.m. Bringing this meeting to order. Roll call, please.
We have Director Wilkins,
Present.
Director Smeltzer,
Present.
Director Tresson,
Present.
Director Lewis,
Present.
and President Cox.
Yes. Let's all stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And so we have established a quorum and roll call. Thank you, President Cox.
Okay, first item on the agenda is public comment. Anyone wishing to address the board on any item not on the agenda, now is the time. Go ahead.
We had a public comment submitted to us by Miss Jane Davis that I forwarded to all of you for your consideration this morning. Other than that, I have one hand raised for Mr. Pippin Mater. Go ahead, Mr. Mater.
Good morning, board. Thanks for the opportunity to comment this morning. I wanted to talk a couple of concerns this morning about the cost of consultants and the cost that TTSA has spent over the last few years has dramatically increased. And I want to, I get it for some things like the master plan or even the organizational assessment that was done last year, but I think it is valuable to bring people in for that, people with expertise in for that kind of big picture input. But I do also think there's an opportunity here to make sure that that some of those smaller projects get done in-house. I'm a licensed engineer. I get that, like, along with that license comes the responsibility of signing off on some things from time to time. And I'll hold my specific comments for some of the actual items about the budget and item 8 regarding the organizational assessment until those items. But I suffice it to say that these costs, the costs of consultants are real, and that you spent almost $1 million last year on consultants, and that doesn't include the contracts that you have approved that you'll be paying for this year. And you can see the results in your reserve study, right, where your reserves will go down from 46 million this year to 40 million next year. That's partially due to those increased costs. So I just asked the board to be cognizant of that. And I also asked the board to consider these larger infrastructure projects and keep in mind that the master plan is not in place. And I certainly agree that there's need for upgrades at the plant, but I also think that the plan should be in place before major projects move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mater. And I have no other public comments.
If there is no other public comment, we'll close public comment and move on to professional achievement awards and anniversaries.
Vicki, do you mind addressing that item, please?
Certainly. Good morning, President Cox and directors. Vicki Lufrano, Human Resources Administrator. I'd just like to acknowledge some staff this morning, a couple for their retirements and one as a new employee. First, I'd like to acknowledge the retirements. We have Tristan Simmons, who is retiring in June after 20 years of service at TTSA. And then we have Robert Gray, who is retiring in July with 22 years of service at TTSA. I'd just like to say thank you to Tristan and Bob for all of your years of service, and they have been appreciated here at TTSA. Next, I'd like to welcome Crystal Sublett. She's our new Finance and Administrative Department Manager. Crystal came in and hit the ground running, so I want to welcome you, Crystal, and would you like to address the board at all?
Yes, thank you, Vicki. Yes, I did hit the ground running pretty hard. I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm Crystal Sublett. I have over 25 years of experience in finance, budgeting, auditing, all of the above. And my background, I spent my last 7 years at Washoe County, and prior to that, a good majority of my life was at FedEx in their finance and their IT department. And I have a bachelor's in accounting and a master's in accounting and IT.
Excellent. Thank you, Crystal. And again, welcome. We appreciate you coming to us.
And I also want to thank Bob Gray. You know, you're going to be missed here at TTSA. You're quite the fixture there at our board meetings, and I want you to know that I appreciate all the time and effort you put into IT, and that I'm going to miss seeing you. And the same goes for Tistan. Thank you very much for your service, and you'll be greatly missed, and you are greatly appreciated here at TTSA. Welcome, Crystal. Okay, anything else, Vicki?
No, that's all for me on this one. Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to the consent agenda. Items 1 through 4. If the board has had a chance to review these items each and independently, I'll ask for a motion to approve. Is there any comments on any of the consent agenda items?
I would move approval, Dale.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved by Wilkins, seconded by Lewis. No further comments from the public. Roll call, please.
Director Wilkins,
Yes.
Director Smelser,
Yes.
Director Chesson,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
and President Cox.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Moving along to the regular agenda items. First item, report from the May 19th, 2021 closed session meeting.
President Cox, at the conclusion of the closed session on May 19th, Board of Directors meeting, the meeting was adjourned without providing a report from the closed session. I'm to inform you there was no action taken during closed session of that meeting. With that, President Cox, I recommend and ask that we take item B7, approval of resolution 8, 2021, and move that up to follow my reports.
Okay, if there's no problems with the board of directors in moving item number 7 to item number 2, we'll do so at this time.
Vicki, do you mind addressing item 7 regarding resolution 8, 2021, please?
Certainly. Again, good morning, President Cox and directors. For those following along in the packet, we're looking at pages 223 through 228. During several of the last board meetings, the issue of TTSA's retiree health plan has been discussed, which included the request to bring back to the board a resolution for a vesting schedule. Language within the proposed resolution included the requirement to estimate the change in liability as it relates to the proposed change in retiree health. The presentation of that study took place at last month's board meeting. Following the presentation, the board requested the agency contact CalPERS to determine impacts of amending the current retiree health plan. Specifically, the board wanted verification that the adoption of a vesting schedule would only affect employees hired after the adoption and implementation of the vesting schedule, and not current retirees or current employees upon their future retirement. Additionally, the board sought guidance related to the agency's current contribution toward active employee medical benefits, whether currently employed or hired after the implementation of a vesting schedule. The expertise of both CalPERS and a benefits attorney were sought on this matter. Both confirmed or reconfirmed that the adoption of a Government Code Section 22893 vesting schedule would not affect current retirees or current employees upon their retirement. Rather, current retirees and current employees upon their retirement will be subject to the plan that is in place prior to the implementation of the state vesting schedule. Additionally, they both confirmed that a possible adoption of a vesting schedule would not affect the agency's current contribution toward active employee medical benefits, whether currently hired or hired in the future. Benefits attorney Ken Ruthenberg is joining our meeting today in order to answer any board questions related to the matter or to explain this matter in more depth. Ken, welcome to our board meeting, and I will now turn this item over to you and the board in order for our board to ask questions. Board, board, do you have any questions for Mr. Ruthenberg?
I don't have any questions. We've talked about this a couple of times now.
And actually, because he's on the phone, he can dial, I know he can hear us, but he's not at a computer. He can dial *9 to unmute himself so he can speak.
So if there are no board questions, the recommendation would be to approve Resolution 8/2021.
Any questions or comments from the board on this agenda item? We've discussed it rather thoroughly in the past. Blake, you had some considerations and questions in the past. Does this presentation meet your approval?
Thanks, Dale. Yeah, I think this is the direction we wanted to go. So effective employees hired on or after, what is that date? Is it today's date?
August 1st.
August 1st.
Correct.
Will be subject to the vesting schedule. All employees and current retirees are subject to what has historically been our policy. So, okay. I think this is a step in the right direction, and I would move to adopt resolution number 8-2021.
Okay, Director Lewis, you also had concerns on some of the language that was presented first in the first series of reviews. Does this resolution meet your approval?
It does. I think we've, based on our discussions from the previous month, all my questions have been answered. And I think we should move forward and adopt this resolution. And I'll second Blake's motion.
Okay, and continuing on, Director Smeltzer.
No questions. I'm good.
Go ahead, Dave.
I said no questions. I'm good with this.
Okay, Dan?
He's good too.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor by Director Trithen, and we have a second by Director Lewis. If there are no further questions or comments from the board, any questions or comments from the public?
Yes, we have a public comment by Mr. Pippin Mader. Go ahead, Pippin.
Great, thank you, board. I just had a quick question at the very end of this, the recommendation. It says management and staff recommend approval of resolution 8-2021. And I guess I was wondering, was staff surveyed on this? What was the staff input? Because it does say there that staff does actively recommend this. Thank you.
Would you like me to address that?
Say again?
Would you like me to address that?
Go ahead.
Yeah, the board of directors, this has been a conversation over previous months. Staff has been communicated with through correspondences from me with email. That is a typical template that we use for the recommendation, meaning management and staff. Staff's recommendation would particularly be assigned to Vicky here. But if there are comments from the public or from our staff, if they would like to go ahead and provide comment, we can open it up to them as well. But like I said, we've discussed this over many months. So with that, I do not see the need to delay the approval.
Okay, if there are no further questions or comments from the public or the board, go ahead, Blake.
Yeah, hi, Dale. I just want to, reiterate that, I think that this policy is extremely generous. It's less generous than our existing policy, but is still, I think we're providing a tremendous benefit for future employees at TTSA. I just wanted a clarification. I did ask when this became effective, August 1st. Are we hiring anybody between now and August 1st? And how did August 1st get selected? Do we have the option to, possibly bring that up? LaRue, what is our current recruitment status?
Yeah, Blake, and this is actually a CalPERS rule. So as long, if you guys do adopt this during this month, as long as I provide it to CalPERS by the last day of this month, then it will become effective the first day of the next following month, meaning one whole month passes and then effective that next month. So the earliest we could have it effective is August 1st.
Thanks for clarifying that, Vicki.
You're welcome.
Okay, we're going to move forward in the adoption of this proposed resolution 8-2021. We have a motion on the floor from Blake, a second from Lane. No further questions or comments. Roll call, please.
Director Wilkins,
Yes.
Director Smelser,
Yes.
Director Tresson,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
and President Cox.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Moving along to item 3 on the agenda, public hearing for public comment related to the consideration of adopting a resolution of the Board of Directors 2021 through 2022 tax roll billing report and approving billing and resolution and collection of charges on the county tax roll. This
Dale,
standard operating procedure.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Dale. We actually have to go back to item number 2. We went from 1 to 7, so we need to go back to number 2 for approval of the minutes.
My mistake.
That's okay.
If everyone has had a chance to review the minutes of May the 19th, 2021, and find these minutes in order,
I'll move approval.
it's been approved by Director Lewis.
Second.
Seconded by Director Wilkins. No further questions or comments? No comments from the public. Roll call, please.
Director Wilkins,
Yes.
Director Smelser,
Yes.
Director Tresson,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
and President Cox.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Next item, public hearing for public comment. Item number 3.
President Cox? Yes, there's a public hearing associated with the, like you stated, the upcoming tax roll billing. Crystal Selbit will present this item. And I just wanted to note that we do have to open the hearing, close the hearing, and then make a determination if there's a majority protest before we proceed with the following resolutions. So with that, Crystal, could you proceed to give us some information on the item, please?
Yes. So as General Manager Griffin stated, this is a public hearing to solicit public comment on the sewer service charge billing and collections through the respective county tax rolls. My recommendation is to open the hearing, receive public comment, and determine if there's a majority public protest. So with that, that would be my recommendation for opening it up to public comment at this time.
Have we received any public comment on the matter, Rochelle?
None. Not written or email or phone call.
Do we have any public comment from the current attendees?
No.
So with that, we can close public hearing as there are no public comments.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to close the public hearing. And there's no action taken.
No action. This is just a public hearing to receive input from the public.
Okay, once again, if there is no public comment or public input to the adopting the budget of 2021-22 tax roll billing, we're going to close the public hearing and move on to item number 4.
Thank you, President Cox. As it pertains to items 4 through 6, there are all resolutions related to the collection of the tax rolls, of the service charges to the corresponding tax rolls. With that, Crystal Sublett will go ahead and proceed to provide some information on each. Thank you, Crystal.
So as LaRue stated, item number 4 is the approval of resolution number 5, adopting the 21-22 tax roll billing report and approving billing and collection of charges in the County of Placer tax roll. The County of Placer's agency sewer service charge revenue is $5.2 million, and the county's fees are $52,000. Management staff recommends to approve this resolution and the billing report summary after questions and comments.
Okay, as far as reviewing each one of these county items, each and independently, Crystal, do you want to continue moving along to the Nevada County, which is item 5, and then we'll do approval one at a time after all of your input?
Absolutely. So item number 5 is the approval of resolution number 6, and that is adopting the 21-22 tax roll billing report and approving billing and collection of charges on the County of Nevada's tax roll. And their sewer service charge revenue is for $4.4 million, and their fees are $5,700. And then item number 6, approval of resolution number 7, adopting the 21-22 tax roll billing report and approving billing and collection charges on the County of El Dorado's tax roll. And their sewer that's hard to say, sewer service charge revenue is $590,000, and their fees are $1,500.
Okay, thank you very much, Crystal. I'd like to let the board know that we're going to go through the adoption of these rather rapidly. So if there's any questions as we move through, let's see by raising your hand. Blake, you got any questions or comments?
Just, it's more of a comment. Well, it's a question. What percentage of our customer base do we collect on the tax roll versus through direct billing? A rough approximation.
So I have an approximation by county, and we are on our tax roll for Placer. We are at a percentage of roughly 88. Nevada County is 99 for residential. Both of those were for residential. El Dorado is 99 for residential. And then for commercial, we're roughly 60% for Placer, 65% for Nevada, and 33% for El Dorado.
Thanks. Kudos to staff for bringing so many folks onto the tax roll, and encourage you guys to continue to expand that as well. So that's all, Dale.
Okay, thank you, Blake. If there's no further questions or comments from the board on
I have a question with regards to the commercial, bringing the commercial on. I mean, Placer was, you said 60% done. Crystal, when do you anticipate that we get the majority of the commercials on the rolls?
I'm sorry, I thought I was on mute. We are anticipating getting the majority of the commercial within the next year.
Okay.
Apart from any of the ones that are not allowed to be on the roll, the exempt, and then we have the timeshare HOA type ones.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, once again, we're going to start moving through the adoption of these resolutions. Before we do, if there are any other questions from the board on any of the next 3 items on the agenda, now is the time. Any questions from the public on any of the following 3 items on the agenda? Now is the time.
There is no public comment.
Seeing none and hearing none, I'd like a motion to approve resolution number 5-2021.
Also move.
It's been moved by Blake, seconded by Director Lewis. If there are no further questions or comments, a roll call, please.
Director Wilkins,
Yes.
Director Smelser,
Yes.
Director Tresson,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
and President Cox.
Yes. Moving along to item 5, approval of resolution number 6-2021. Need a motion.
So moved.
It's been moved by Director Smeltzer, seconded by Director Lewis. No further questions. Roll call, please.
Director Wilkins,
Yes.
Director Smelser,
Yes.
Director Tresson,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
and President Cox.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Moving along to item 6, approval of resolution number 7-2021.
So moved.
Questions? Need a motion.
Motion.
By Director Lewis,
Second.
seconded by Director Trisson. The roll call, please.
Director Wilkins,
Yes.
Director Smelser,
Yes.
Director Tresson,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
and President Cox.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Next item is item number 8, approval of the organizational chart.
Thank you, President Cox. Vicki Lufrano will address the organizational chart and the subsequent items for the updated classification descriptions and adjustments from the cost of living and salary schedules. With that, Vicki, could you address those items, please? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Again, good morning, board. For those following along, we're on pages 229 to 230 in the board packet. In an ongoing effort to accurately reflect staffing, the agency's organizational chart is being presented today. The IT department manager is retiring in July, and the position will no longer be filled. Existing staff that currently report to the IT manager will report to the E&I supervisor within the maintenance department. Some IT services will likely be outsourced to a private vendor, with the internal OT services of SCADA and plant control remaining internal. Many services that the IT specialists provide correspond directly to the work performed by the E&I technicians. Therefore, the change in reporting duty will create additional efficiencies and increase communication within the organization. Richard, would you like to expand on any of that, or are we good for now?
I think you covered it pretty well. If there's any questions, I'm happy to field any questions that might any of the directors may have.
Okay. So at this point, management and staff recommend the approval of the organizational chart with an effective date of August 1st, 2021.
Okay, any questions from the board in regards to the organizational chart? Director Lewis,
No.
comments?
No comment.
Director Trisson, any comments?
I just wonder if Vicki or LaRue or possibly Bob could just elaborate a little bit on this outside IT consultant concept and what services they're going to be providing to make up for the no longer having a IT manager.
Sure, I can give some history on the organizational development of IT as it comes to the proposed consultant scope of work. I'll defer that to Richard. But as it pertains to the organizational chart, when the competent classification study was performed a couple years back, a recommendation was to dissolve the IT department, and not dissolve them, but relocate them and remove them as a standalone unit to under the scope of the maintenance department, as there's a lot of crossover and tasks between the E&I department and IT. I did like the management team we had. I liked the structure we had then. So the intent was to maintain that structure until there's changes in personnel, which is where we're at now, meaning Bob Gray's retirement. So we're going to go to the recommendation, which is to locate IT staff, the specialists under the E&I. What that does is it prevents, well, it reduces the relationship of one superior and one subordinate at that time. We had brought on an additional IT staff specialist as part of the succession planning. So the idea and the intent was, we knew when Mr. Gray was going to retire, we were going to maintain the 2 staff. So that's essentially what's happening now. As it pertains to the scope of services for the consultant, we did meet with them, and Richard Palante is the project manager for that, and he'll be able to provide some additional details.
Sure. So as General Manager mentioned, we've met, and the goal overtaking with me overseeing the group now is to build on what Bob has built over the last 20 years. We think the best way to do that is by leverage a nationwide firm that can bring in one security experts. Anyone who watches the news nowadays can see the major concern we have for security. This will let us leverage their expertise. They have a whole security center that does 24 hours, 7-day-a-week monitoring, specific softwares that are more proactive than reactive as far as monitoring our systems. So the scope will include pretty much what we consider a turnkey solution. They would provide everything from security down to a help desk with a ticket resolution system that if it's a major outage, it gets moved up to the higher resolution table, and then allows us to have just the employees call in if they have a specific desktop issue and get it resolved via help desk with a remote desktop type application.
So the current 2 folks, the IT specialists, are moving underneath the E&I, and I know that the treatment plant has a tremendous amount of instrumentation and controls, and they're going to focus under the I&E supervisor on continuing to provide that functionality, but some of the more of the non-operational IT stuff, the Outlook and Microsoft and so cybersecurity, we're going to go to a outside firm that has expertise in that, because there really is a need for a lot of expertise specifically in that area to be the kind of go-to person for the organization.
That's correct. And it gives us the ability to assign this 2 staff directly to the OT side of things. With all of the master plan projects that are anticipated to come along, we have numerous improvements that we already want to make in addition to supporting those projects as they come along, because in-house support of those, in my experience over the years, just works way better than trying to bring in an integrator who doesn't know your system and then trying to integrate your SCADA system together, because there's many different ways to do things. This allows our staff to focus 100% on that and keep the system up and running, as well as bringing in all the new equipment.
And to avoid a gap in services, what is the timing for contracting with the outside IT firm?
We're moving the project along as fast as we can. We're currently scheduling a workshop so that they can do a equipment and assessment of our current system, so they know what they're walking into to be able to provide us a proposal. My hope is by August, but we'll be well on our way to transitioning to their services.
We do anticipate, Blake, that we would come back in the next meeting to ask for approval from the board for their services.
Okay. Thank you. No further questions.
Okay. This approval of the organizational chart has been thoroughly and totally discussed and analyzed. If there are no further questions or comments from the board in regards to this agenda item, and there are no further questions or comments from the public regarding this agenda item.
We do have a public comment.
Dale, we have a public comment.
Okay.
Go ahead, Pippin.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry, I was double muted. Great. I had a few comments on this particular item. This one actually makes me pretty nervous. I feel like I dug back and looked at the November recommendation from Carollo, and they explicitly suggest that the SCADA system be done outside, and that the sort of regular IT stuff be continued to be done inside. I think that's on page 68 or so of the board packet. So that's pretty, this is going exactly different direction from what you've paid for outside expertise to tell you to do. This is also, I think that IT is a really concerning topic right at the moment. I think Richard mentioned that, right? That this is, that there's been we've all heard the ransomware things. We've all heard security issues. Carollo explicitly said that security was a concern and a weakness at TTSA, and that there needed to be improvements there, and that putting then IT underneath of I&E supervisor, which is sort of outside of the historic requirements or expertise of the I&E supervisor. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think this is something that that you have experience with, Richard. I think that there's a real opportunity here to have IT be done correctly, and I'm not sure that eliminating positions is the direction that that should be happening right now. And I'm, especially with the security concerns, and I just saw Crystal, right, has a background in IT, right? I'm not saying that she looks plenty busy, but that being said, this is a thing that people have degrees in education and experience in, and having IT under someone who has that experience seems like it's going to be would be really valuable, and is going to be more valuable moving forward. IT is going to be more important, not less important, as we go along. Thanks.
Thank you, Pippin. Okay.
Okay, if there are no other comments from the public, and there are no longer any comments from the board,
Hey, Dale.
Go ahead, Dan.
I'm curious, probably a question for LaRue. I wanted to just follow up on Pippin's comment about, I've seen IT under kind of admin and finance in some organizations. I'm curious to hear LaRue's thoughts on having it under Richard over in operations as compared to having it as part of IT or admin and finance.
Sure. We did have discussion with the department manager on this. As I stated, there's a lot of scope coverage, crossover between the E&I supervisors and IT specialists. It was part of the so putting them under that group, we would increase the efficiencies of communication, work, and make sure that the projects would be more streamlined. It also was in line with the comp and classification recommendation at that time, which was to go ahead and to remove it as a single standalone unit underneath the E&I. And you are correct, there are places where the IT department is under admin. Likewise, there are other locations where they are under the E&I. I relied on Bryce Consulting to make a recommendation on that when we were doing our preliminary reviews of the comp and class, and she did recommend it under the E&I department. Do you have any experience and history on that, Richard, you'd like to add?
I think you'll find, if you look at many different agencies, the SCADA or OT side falls underneath the maintenance group. My experience is from a much larger organization, the IT side was contracted out, and again, leverages that ability to use people that are experts in the field that are doing work for other government agencies. We're fairly small here, as you guys realize. I think you could go either way. I have no concerns with overseeing the contract with a provider. I think the management staff here works so closely together that while it may be assigned to one particular person, we're all helping oversee everything anyhow. So I think it'll work just fine.
So you guys are referring to something called OT as opposed to IT. The OT is,
Operational technology, so SCADA side of things.
okay. You know, and you know, if we've learned anything over the last couple of years, the organizational chart is a dynamic, ever-changing kind of evolution. And so I guess I would trust that, you know, this is your guys' best effort at it. I kind of am curious also on Dan's comments that, you know, if there's an IT consultant and if one of those IT specialists that are both under the E&I, you know, really are doing much more of the IT than the OT, that, you know, there maybe at some future point, it may make sense to have that contract with the outside IT firm be something, especially if Crystal's got that experience over there. But, you know, again, you guys have, we're not setting this organizational chart in stone. We've seen it move and should be dynamic if you find there's a better way to put it together in the future.
And if I could add, we'll be utilizing one of our current IT specialists, Luke Swan. He will be providing the day-to-day project management with the selected vendor. So we will have one of our hands-on technicians helping oversee the contract and their activities. So they'll be fully involved.
Okay, if there are no further discussion, it's been recommended by staff that we approve the organizational chart to be implemented and effective on August the 1st.
So I'll make the motion.
Been moved by Director Lewis,
Oh, second.
seconded by Director Smeltzer. No further questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Director Wilkins,
Yes.
Director Smeltzer,
Yes.
Director Tresson,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
and President Cox.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Following along with that approval, we have approval of updated classification for the E&I and IT specialist classifications.
Vicki, would you address that, please?
Certainly. For those following along, we're on pages 231 through 239 in the board packet. And in accordance with the updated organizational chart that was just approved, and as described in the prior board agenda item that we just spoke about, with the upcoming retirement of the IT department manager and the new reporting duty of the IT specialist position, there are required amendments to 2 job descriptions, including the E&I supervisor and the IT specialist. Those changes include adding language to the E&I supervisor job description in order to incorporate the supervision of the additional subordinate staff, as well as changes to the IT specialist job description to include the change in reporting duty from the IT manager to the E&I supervisor. Management and staff recommend the approval of the updated classification descriptions for the E&I supervisor and IT specialist to be effective August 1st, 2021.
Any questions or comments from the board in regards to this item? Anyone?
Just a question, LaRue, you worked with Bryce Consulting on this,
Yes, we did.
and this was kind of this was their recommendation.
Yeah, it was the original recommendation. We followed it with them, make sure that we changed the reporting duties to be in line with what the organizational chart reflected.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I got a question, LaRue. When you regards to, you know, on this proposal here, and it says physical impact, none. We won't know what the physical impact is till we get what the consulting, outside consulting fee is. Is that correct?
Right, when it comes to the fiscal impact for the job descriptions, that, yeah, there is none because they're just in the job descriptions. But yes, when it comes to organizational assessment, let me go back, sorry, the organizational chart, It does say none, but you are correct. Once we get a contract, a proposed contract, that would be the impact. And then we can report that at that time with the contract.
Okay, because I mean, you're losing one position, but you're also going to an outside consultant. So it'd be for further reporting. I want to see where we're at once we get that done. So if it's a positive impact financially, it sounds like it would be.
It does appear so on the surface, and we will keep you up to date and report that accordingly.
Okay.
Okay, any other comments? Any other questions from the board? Seeing none and hearing none. Any comments from the public?
There are no public comments at this time.
Okay, it's been recommended by staff to approve and the updated classifications for the description of E&I and IT. No other comments? Need a motion to approve.
Move approval.
Second.
Been moved by Director Wilkins, seconded by Director Lewis. No further questions or comments. Roll call, please.
Director Wilkins,
Yes.
Director Smelser,
Yes.
Director Tresson,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
and President Cox.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Next item is item number 10, approval of the cost of living adjustment and salary schedules for fiscal year 2021, 2022.
Thank you, President Cox. This again aligns itself with the organizational chart and classification description updates. So with that, Vicki, could you provide an update as well, please?
Certainly. And again, for those following along in the board packet, we're on pages 240 to 244. And in 2019, as part of resolution 12-2019, the board approved annual cost of living adjustments to be applied to Group B within the salary schedule. The COLA will be applied in accordance with the California CPI All Urban Consumers beginning in February and ending in February of the following year, and will be applied beginning the first full pay period of the fiscal year, which will begin on July 4th, 2021. The board approved calculation for the CPI includes 100% of the CPI amount up to 3%. Based on that information, this year's CPI of 1.7% will be calculated and applied to equate to a 1.7% increase in salaries within Group B of the salary schedule. Included within your packet are two separate salary schedules. The first salary schedule will be effective, if approved, July 4th, 2021, and corresponds to the anticipated salary adjustments to Group B and to the related COLA. The second salary schedule, which will be effective August 1st, 2021, will incorporate the changes of the organizational chart that we've just spoken about. Management and staff recommend the approval of the cost of living adjustment and corresponding salary schedule with an effective date of July 4th, 2021. Additionally, management and staff recommend the approval of the second salary schedule to incorporate the changes within the organizational chart with an effective date of August 1st, 2021.
And Vicki, to clarify, the salaries did not change between the two salary schedules with different effective dates.
Correct. Correct.
They've been amended to represent the new structure of the IT specialists under the maintenance department, correct?
That is correct, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Vicki. Is there any questions or comments from the board in regards to the cost of living and salary schedules for fiscal year 2021, 2022? Board of Directors, any comments?
I just had a comment, looking at, comes a little further back in the package as far as budgeting for next year with this, what that increase is going to be, because this year is quite a bit less with the inflation that we're going to see next year. See what percentage that's going to be and if it's going to reflect in the next year's budget. We won't know till we get that number.
Well, for the budget, if I'm understanding that correctly, the budget that's in the packet for discussion, when the projected salaries and wages were done for this upcoming fiscal year, management did take into account of the expected COLA, which was 2%. So
Okay.
it did have the data. So I think we rounded up to 2% for simplicity.
Okay. But I mean, next year it could be 3 or 4%. So,
That is correct.
Yeah.
We would not know till next year. I apologize if I misunderstood your question.
right. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments from the board? Seeing none and hearing none, opening up for comments from the public.
We do have a public comment from Pippin Mater. Go ahead, Pippin.
Great, thanks, board. Thanks for putting up with my public comments. I appreciate it. I just wanted to talk a tiny bit about cost of living and CPI, right? And I understand that you have a process, right, the February to February, but you know, if CPI includes a sheet of plywood, that CPI would be way up. All joking aside, you know, CPI is this market basket of goods, and clearly local housing has gone crazy, and that, you know, roughly speaking, people spend a third of their salary on housing, and the costs in Truckee, Tahoe area, even in Reno, have gone up substantially. And I guess I wonder about whether using the statewide CPI is the correct one, or whether you're sort of driving people out of the community and being less cost competitive as you move forward. And, you know, I want to, you can see it all over, right? Later on, you're going to see in the budget, right? Or later on, there's an item about the Lime system improvement, right? And you got a bid that was way higher than you expected, and I'll quote, because of recent trends due to increased material and labor costs. So this is clearly something that, you know, Lane was mentioning, inflation next year, April to April inflation. CPI just came out with the April to April numbers, and that's 4%. Which is a lot different than 1.7%. And just as a, you know, anecdote, my union just renegotiated our contract and we got a 5.58% increase. So I guess I would ask the board to think a little bit about what they're doing with salaries here and the effect of both local and macroscopic inflation. Thank you.
Thank you, Pippin.
Okay, if there are no further questions or comments in regards to the cost of living approval.
Would you like me to provide some clarification on how it's currently done?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to remind the board of directors, we had a resolution number 12/2020, which defines how the COLA is calculated. It defines which group to use, which year to use. If the board wishes to amend that, we can do so in the future. But for this item, I believe and I recommend that we continue to enforce what we've already adopted, and then consider any changes later on down the road. And management's recommendation is still to proceed with the salary schedules prepared in the packet.
Okay, if there are no further questions or comments from the board and the public has had their opportunity to speak, I'll ask for a motion to approve the cost of living adjustment and salary schedules for fiscal year 2021-2022. Need a motion?
I make that motion.
Made by Wilkins,
Second.
seconded by Director Lewis. No further questions or comments. Roll call, please.
Director Wilkins,
Yes.
Director Smelser,
Yes.
Director Tresson,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
and President Cox.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Next item, number 11, approval of additional payment towards the agency's unfunded UAL.
Thank you, President Cox. As you recall, last year when we adopted the annual budget, there was a item to provide additional discretionary payment towards our UAL. At that time, it was decided that we would go ahead and split that total payment in half, one in the beginning of the year and potentially revisit it at the end of the fiscal year. It is the end of the fiscal year, and after review of how our investments are doing, staff has looked into the benefit of paying that amount. And we have brought the other half of the UAL to the board for consideration for payment. With that, I'll hand it over to Crystal, and she'll be able to provide some details on the payment amount and the effects of it. Thank you, Crystal.
Yeah. So yes, as Lou was saying, this is a request for approval for the final payment for the additional payment for the agency's unfunded accrued liability. We've made an original payment of 1.3, and this is the additional payment, not the regular standard payment. We made an original payment of 1.3 million, and we had approved an additional payment of 2.6. This is to request approval to pay the remaining amount of another 1.3 million. If the agency pays this amount, CalPERS will give us interest for the full year on the payment as if it was paid at the beginning of the year. Additionally, this payment will save the agency approximately 1.6 million if the agency were to maintain minimum payments moving forward. The exact savings cannot be determined as we don't have the recent actuarial report. This does not include this additional payment totaling 2.6. If this 1.3 is approved today, does not include the required payment of which we paid already for 996,000. If we plan to come to the board with a recommendation for possible future additional payments in FY22 in the next 5 years at a later date, once we receive the master sewer plan and the actuarial report. Do you guys have any questions?
Go ahead, Blake.
So Crystal, by making this additional discretionary payment of $1.3 million, how does that impact for the coming fiscal year our required annual payment against the UAL?
And LaRue, correct me if I'm wrong, it will not impact the required payment. We have that, and that information we have listed in the budget later on. Those are the regular payments that are required with the amortization schedule, that the original amortization schedule that they gave us.
If I may, Crystal,
Yes.
if we provide payment prior to the end of the fiscal year, a set date, they will take that into account when they reassess and do an updated actuarial. So there will be impacted. There will be minor changes based on that. Based on the calculator that they provided to us, we were able to input the amount of 1.3, and then they're able to calculate what our expected savings were based off of the current investments of the fund right now. So to answer that, Blake, we do expect a change into it, but it would be minimal as compared to what's expected from the budget. As Crystal said, we couldn't really project those numbers now because they hadn't completed the actuarial study. Does that make sense?
So the flyer that is included in this agenda item that's dated June 2nd says it indicates a payment on June 21st of 2021, which is 4 days from now. This is on page 246 of the packet, of 1.32 million. Is that a projected? That's if we approve this item, they've kind of calculated this additional payment?
Correct.
And so then you scroll down to the next page in the packet and you come up with your annual UAL prepayment option for the coming year 21-22, and it's $1,009,000, which I think was less than so it does reduce our ongoing required payments.
It would, yes, it would reduce it. But if the question was asking, is the payment going to be exactly as stated? We do expect a change on that when they perform the new actuarial study. We do expect it to be minor.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's great to jump in now and make this additional payment against our UAL. Given the performance that the PERS saw over this last year. And I would recommend a additional discretionary payment of 1.320500 be made.
Thank you, Blake. Any further discussion?
Yeah, with regards to you know, okay, that one, on the payment of $1,320,000, I mean, are we basically saving 7% when we make that payment? Is that what is that a cost savings to us down the road? I mean, when you get in that, Crystal, when you said there's a total cost savings of 1.6 million, over what period of time?
That's over the remaining life of the schedule. So the next 20 to 30 years. I can't remember the exact number of years of our amortization schedule. The interest, and LaRue might want to jump in here, but the interest benefit on making that payment early,
Yeah.
I don't know the exact interest amount that they had given us for that. I don't think they can tell us until we make the payment on the interest savings that we're going to have.
Right. So they do tell us, and they have a calculator that they provide us to assist us in this process, Lane. And it gives us in one of those options for the tab service to put in a one-time discretionary payment. And it projects what the overall savings is. When we state it's 1.6, we use the reference point of just making the minimum payments to finish the payment schedule of 20, 30 years.
Right.
Because we didn't want to make any anticipations or expectations of future UAL discretionary payments, which I do think we should continue to do. So if I'm remembering your question, it does reflect the 1.6 million as to a breakdown. I forget how that breakdown was. Right now, I don't have that printed, but it is a definite payment, as Blake stated, to go ahead and pay this in advance. As you recall, we took an aggressive 5-year approach a couple years ago. We made the continual for average $1 million annual payments. And then we topped it off 2 years ago with $2.5 million on top of that. And this year we're considering about the same thing when we make the second payment, about $2.5 million, $2.6 million, totaling over $3.5 million every payment every year. So it's consistent with the path that we wanted to do. Overall, it saves us a considerable amount of money in the tunes of millions of dollars in interest alone. As you can see in the budget moving forward, in a future agenda item, we've held off on that because there are other options for us to do to fund that. So again, we would come back at a later time to address that, and we'll get more information about it as we move into the budget. So I hope that answered your question, Lane.
Yeah.
Okay. There are no further questions or comments from the board. I'll open it up at this time for any questions or comments from the public. Seeing none and hearing none, there's a motion on the floor by Director Treason for approval. Need a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Lewis. No further questions or comments. Roll call, please.
Director Wilkins,
Yes.
Director Smelser,
Yes.
Director Tresson,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
and President Cox.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Next item on the agenda is the budget for fiscal year 2021 through 2022.
Thank you, President Cox. As you can see, the budget here is very similar to last year's format. There are some changes in the budget. We'll get into details in a little bit as it addresses the IT component. I do want to state that typically in past years, we brought the budget to the board's attention, received input, and then came back a subsequent month and then provided adoption. We were not able to do that last month. So we fully anticipate that if there is enough in satisfactory or potential comments from the board that require us to go back and revisit the budget and amend it, we can return at a special meeting or in the July meeting to adopt. So with that, I'll hand it over to Crystal and she will go ahead and review the proposed annual budget for us.
Thank you, LaRue. So for those that are following along in their packet, the budget is pages 251 to 293. And I'll be going through that and covering the high level points. If at any time you have questions, go ahead and stop me at that time and we can address the questions at that time. We will be reviewing the FY20 budget and FY21 budget and FY21 projected actuals year to date first. And then we will go through and discuss the FY22 budget. As stated in previous items, Please note that there is an exception in the format that the IT department has been moved under to the maintenance department for the FY22 budget. So the comparison there will be a little different when we discuss that in the FY22 budget. So with that, start there. All right, so the page 253, want to recognize those who have helped create this budget this year. The majority of these people, or all of these people, have prepared the majority of the budget, and I wanted to, thank them for all of their help and being patient with my millions of questions.
Excuse me, Crystal.
Yes.
Excuse me, Crystal, will you share your screen so we can?
I'm not allowed to share. I'm denied. I already tried a minute ago, and it says screen sharing has been disabled.
Do you have overruling authorities there, Rochelle? You're on mute, Rochelle.
Sorry about that. Go ahead and try that again. I made you a co-host, so you should be able to do that.
Oh, now I have power. Here we go. Okay. Can you guys see that?
Yep.
If I move it over this way, can you see it?
No.
Previous screen you had worked.
Okay. So that's the screen. That's the spot right there. Is it big enough?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so here is the list of the participants who prepared the budget that I was just speaking of. Now we have the table of contents, and then this is the table index. So we are gonna, my notes back up now. Sorry. I apologize. Okay, so as we go through this, please note that we have 4 funds. One is the general fund, which is our operating fund, and then we have 3 reserve funds, funds 2, 6, and 7. The wastewater capital reserve fund, replacement rehabilitation and upgrade fund, and the emergency and contingency fund. So we will go ahead and go through the fiscal 2021 budget review. And within this review, we're going to note that we're going to see that the projected actuals for FY21 versus the the budget for FY21. And we'll start with the revenues. So this is a fund revenue summary, which is overall revenues for the agency, and it's 100.3% of the actual budget. And now I'm going to go down through with each and discuss each item individually. So the general fund revenue review for the operating fund is 99.7% of the budget at 16.7 million. And then the wastewater capital reserve fund revenue is 127.7% of the budget, which is higher than expected sewer connection fee revenues and lower interest rates than expected. Then we have the replacement, rehabilitation, and upgrade fund revenue, which is 18.2% of budget. As we all know, the revenue from LAIF came in at a lot less, or the interest revenue from LAIF came in at a lot less than we expected it to. Then we have the emergency and contingency reserve fund, which is 27% of the budget, and that also came in at a lower interest rate. You will see the effects of that for all of the areas. Now we will discuss fund expenditures. In summary, general fund expenditures are 1.5 million lower than budgeted. And then we can go through the details on that through each area. So for the admin department, we're looking at 83.8% of budget. So our projected actuals are less than budget. There's a decrease in salaries and wages and employee benefits and professional services. Those are the big contenders there. In the operations department, which the let me back up. Sorry, the sub-departments in the admin department. Oh, sorry, there are not any sub-departments, my fault. The sub-departments in the operations department are the operations and laboratory sub-departments, and they are 94.6% of their budget. So they are also under budget, primarily due to unfilled positions within the department. Now we go to the engineering department review, and their sub-departments are the engineering and safety departments, and they are 77.5% of the budget. So they are under budget as well, primarily due to professional services included in annual general engineering service agreements, which are used on an as-needed basis. They are lower than budgeted amounts, and other factors are the contractual services and supplies and repairs and maintenance. Now moving on down to the maintenance department. Now in this FY21 budget review, the maintenance department does not include the IT department. It includes maintenance, electrical and instrumentation, and warehouse subdepartments. They are 90.3% of budget, so they are also under budget, lower than expected contractual services. As we all know, during the pandemic, contractor scheduling was restricted, and reduced supplies, repairs, and maintenance expenditures as well. And here is the FY21 IT budget expenditures budget. They are 90.2% of their budget to actuals, and this is mostly due to a partial year staff vacancy and reduced use of supplies and repairs and maintenance for typical projects, typical maintenance projects. Moving on to the wastewater capital reserve fund. This is the approved budget, or this is the fund for all of the wastewater capital projects, and they are 140.6% of budget, so they are actually over budget, and that is attributed to projected actual an increase in projected actual improvement fund expenditures, as well as projects that were done. So Fund 6, Replacement, Rehabilitation, and Upgrade Fund, they are 75.8% of overall budget, with 67.5% of that before the debt payment. And they are approximately that, or they are less than budget because projects were not accomplished during the year, or lower than expected due to some competitive bidding process. We had, I believe, a bid that came in under than was expected on one of the projects. Now we'll move on to the FY22 budget numbers. Set up the same format as the FY21 budget to projected actuals, apart from the IT being grouped in with the maintenance department. So overall, total agency revenues are 104.1% over projected actuals and 104.5% over projected budget. Here's the general fund revenue summary. It's the general fund revenue is 105.8. FY22 budget is 105.8% over projected actuals and 105.5% over projected FY21 budget. The capital reserve revenue is 92.2% over projected actuals and 117.7% 7% over prior year budget. Fund 6, replacement, rehabilitation, and upgrade fund revenue is 79.9% over projected actuals and 14.5% over prior year budget. Please note that the LAIF is part of the significant variance in projected budget over actuals, and the current year budget is more in line with the expectation of the low interest rate. Then the emergency and contingency reserve fund is the same analysis as the replacement, rehabilitation, upgrade fund because of the LAIF reduction in interest rate on LAIF. So the FY22 budget is in line with the projected actuals. So now we'll move on to fund expenditures. So the general fund summary and review. Before we go into that, I wanted to make a note that we'll go across all of the fund expenditures is that in general, most of your employee, you would expect your salaries and wages and your employee benefits to fluctuate either direction the same because they're closely related, but you will see that the benefits have a full year this time in FY22 of the HRA cost sharing health benefits and in addition to that, health insurance premiums have increased significantly in FY22 over FY21. So we are now on table 19. For those who have a paper packet, that's on page 270. The general fund expenditures overall FY22 budget over projected actuals is 118.8%, approximately 2.4 million more than prior fiscal or more than fiscal year projected actuals, and 106.4%, 0.9 million over prior year budget. We'll be breaking that down by department. Table 20, general fund expenditures, the admin department. The admin department is FY22 budget over projected actuals, 119.6%. It's approximately a $503,000 increase due to employee benefits, as I stated earlier, from the effects of the HRA and the insurance rates. And then over prior year budget totals are similar with only minor differences. Reductions in professional services and salary wages offset the increase of insurance expenditures to generate a minimal fiscal year budget or minimal change in fiscal year budgets. Within the operations department expenditures, we have 109.1%, approximately a $539,000 increase over projected actuals, and then 103.1% with an approximate $198,000 increase over prior year budget. Most of the increase is attributable to employee benefits, and then office expense includes departmental software programs. And so then we also have an increase in supplies, repairs, and maintenance for projects. Within the engineering department, we have table 22, page 273. We have 155.7% of FY22 budget over the projected actuals and 120.6% of FY22 budget over FY21 budget. The increase in over actuals, $608,000, is attributed to increased salaries and wages and employee benefits for an additional engineering staff member. Our contractual services are to include digital scanning of the TRI and an updated ARC flash study. And the professional services are to include the typical engineering service agreements that we have every year. 2022 budget over 21 budget is approximately a $291,000 increase, which is primarily attributed to increased staff costs and contractual services. Table 10 or Fund 10 general fund expenditures for the maintenance department. So when we're going through this analysis, remember that the prior year budget and the prior year budget does not include the IT staff, and the projected actuals does not include the IT staff, but the FY22 budget does. So the FY22 budget is 148.3% of the projected actuals, and that's approximately a $1.4 million increase attributed to the salaries, wages, and benefits for the additional IT staff to the maintenance department, and an increase in office expense for primarily related to office furniture and software, increased contractual services for defensible space and landscaping, and outsourcing of IT services, and an increase in supplies, repairs, and maintenance for cleaning lines of the Truckee River interceptors, traffic signs, and bypass pumping supplies. The 2021 budget is 133.9% of the FY22 budget is 133.9% of the FY21 budget, approximately a 1.1 million increase, which is primarily attributed to transferring the IT staff and IT contract services, and IT contractual services. So now we're moving on to Fund 2, Wastewater Capital Reserve Fund expenditures. I would like to make a note here. Nope, not here, not this table, sorry. This is our 5-year capital improvement plan for the Wastewater Capital Reserve Fund. There's expected to be variances when we receive the master sewer plan. So we're expecting variances in the projects and adjustments after we receive the master sewer plan. And currently it is, can you see the percentage? Currently we are looking at 15 overall 5-year capital improvements, approximately 15.5 million. And then when we add in the debt service payment, we're up to 26.6 million. And then here's a list of the projects for above. Now we're moving on to the Fund 6, Replacement, Rehabilitation, and Upgrade Fund expenditures. This table identifies the CIP plan for this fund. It continues to also provide a percentage of the debt payment. Overall, the 5-year capital total is 12.8 million, and when you add the debt payment, it's 16.8 million. And it is also expected to be affected by the master sewer plan when that is finalized. And then here's a list of the projects. So now we're going to go through the fund summaries for each of the funds. The general fund summary has a net position increase of approximately 2.3 million for fiscal year 21-22. Sorry. Right here, 2.3 million. The wastewater reserve capital fund summary has a net position is a negative 1 million. And this actually needs to be updated. This table has a calculation error, and that number is one moment. I thought I had it at my fingertips. That number is actually going to be a negative 3.2 million. The original table did not take into consideration the debt payment. And then on table 28, there's also an error in the calculation of the net position. It's going to be not a 2.6 million negative net position, but it's going to be a 3.4 million negative net position, taking into consideration the debt payment. So now we are on table 29. the unfunded accrued liability, which we have already discussed quite a bit. This table represents the minimum payments, annual payments to CalPERS for the liability. As we stated before, we're taking a conservative approach and recommending minimum payments for the budget. At this point, we're planning on returning with a new amortized schedule and potential additional funding options through SEPT, possibly. We're also waiting for, we went conservative with this because we're also wanting to see what the impacts are of the master sewer plan. We didn't want to overcommit. And so we will be coming back to the board once we have those other components and can make a better determination if we want to make additional or if we want to recommend additional payments to the UAL. So now we are on table 30, page 283. This is our projected fiscal year end balances, fund balances. Each fund is shown with the beginning balance, annual revenue, annual expenditure, and applicable UAL payment, and the projected and the end of year balance for each fund, projected end of year balance. So please note that the two tables that we made a correction on, the numbers on this table were actually already correct. So there's no impact to the ending fund balance here, taking into consideration those corrections that we made. The projected ending fund balance is 40.7 million. So for the general fund, the beginning balance, it was set in accordance to the fund policy. So any funds in excess of that, of what we calculate according to the policy, are transferred to Fund 6, the Replacement, Rehabilitation, and Upgrade Fund. So that beginning balance is adjusted for that. Wastewater Capital Reserve beginning fund balance is the actual projected beginning fund balance. The Replacement, Rehabilitation, and Upgrade beginning fund balance has been adjusted according to the transfer from Fund 10. And the Emergency Fund beginning fund balance is the actual projected beginning fund balance. So as you can see, we have a projected fund balance for FY22 of 40.7 million, with the full expectation that the master sewer plan will impact this. So Appendix A is a complete breakdown of all of our budgeted expenses for FY22 in further detail. With that, I conclude the review of the budget. As stated by General Manager LaRue, if there are any major changes, we can amend the budget and return at a future meeting or the regular meeting in July, the regular general meeting in July to adopt the budget. But if there are not any amendments requested, management recommends the adoption of the FY22 annual budget. And that's it.
Crystal,
Yes.
for only being here for a week or two, you have hit the ground running, girl, and you've done an absolute fabulous job in your presentation. It's very user-friendly, and I applaud you for your first budget presentation to the board.
Thank you. I had a lot of help.
Okay, are there any questions from any of the board members? Go ahead, Blake.
I think it was Dave that raised this.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dave.
Yeah, I just wanted a clarification on the wastewater capital reserve fund. In the summary, it says, well, in the beginning, it says, I don't really understand this, but it's the fund is funded from connection charge revenue, and you know, any developer would put into it, I guess. I don't understand why we're running a negative. How does that work? In the fund summary.
Which table, David?
Well, that would be the table 27, the wastewater capital reserve fund summary. So I just don't understand why we're running a negative when we're collecting the funds from developers.
Did you want to address the negative values in the table, Crystal?
So on the, he's talking about the total negative, the 3.2 million, correct?
Correct.
So actually, I think that,
Oh, okay, you're talking about the overall summary.
yes.
Yeah, there is a negative because the revenues aren't as great as the planned expenditures, but we do know in the subsequent tables, table 30, it does not run it into an overall negative because we have a starting balance. Does that make sense, David? So you're really looking at the pure expenditures and revenues, and you are correct in that scenario. We do project having more expenditures than revenues, but we do have a pooled revenue in that fund of past connection fees that'll make sure that overall we are not running into the negative.
Okay, so that negative would go away as the funds are collected.
Yes, sir. So when you look at table 20, we're already starting at a $20.7 million balance is the estimated starting balance.
Table 30,
On table 30, I apologize.
table 30, that's our beginning fund balance, and it's at 21.4 million. And so basically the negative is it's going to reduce our fund balance by that 3.2 million.
Okay,
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
It's okay. And that would be the same concept with the rehab fund, David. When you look at the revenues on that table where you do see a negative, did you want to explain that component, Crystal, where we show for the budgeted of $10,000 negative? Because that can be confusing. So could you address that, ma'am?
Yes, of course. So that would be a refund of connection fees to customers. So sometimes we have refunds we give back to the customers for connection fees, and it varies from year to year.
okay,
That's the negative the negative revenue of 9,250 in projected fiscal 21 on table 27. And then we are budgeting an additional 10,000 refund of connection fees to customers in FY22.
okay,
And the reason that occurs is often they would project a project and anticipate so many connection units, which we're basing our connection fee on, and they may not build out to what the expectation was, so then they're due back the fee, which is common.
okay. Got it. Thank you.
What do you think, Blake?
Thanks, Dale. Yeah, I just want to commend LaRue and Crystal and everybody on that budget team. This budget is so much, you guys have made such improvements. It really, I think, shows the right level of granularity to really see what's going on with the agency. I did have some questions, and Crystal, if you still have the ability to share, it'd probably be facilitated best if we all look together at stuff on the screen. So I think I'm going to walk kind of from the top to the bottom. I got a number of questions. I thank everybody for their patience. So on table 2, which is on page 9 of the budget.
Okay,
Page 9 of the budget, or
can you guys see my screen? I was on mute. I didn't realize
yes.
that.
Yes.
Page 261 of the packet.
Thank you.
Sure, no problem.
I was just going to keep going until something looked right.
I had a question. I'll let you bring that up. So my question on this one had to do with our revenue for the ad valorem property taxes. It shows that we had budgeted 3.9 million, but we only saw a revenue stream of 3.8 million. And I went back and looked at the previous year's budget, which showed that our projected actuals for the previous year were 3.76 million. So in 1920, we had 3.76 million in revenue. 2021, 3.8 million. That's a increase in our ad valorem revenue of 1.2%, which doesn't seem consistent with sort of property tax revenues, and particularly as we get further down there, we're looking at for the 2021 to 2022, we're looking at, I think, something on the order of a 6% increase in property taxes. And I'm just wondering, and I don't know that you can solve that problem right now, but it doesn't, something seems a little bit, seemed a little out of whack in terms of our growth in ad valorem property taxes. And again, you'd have to, I had to open up the previous year's budget to see that. Typically, LaRue, you know, our agency, and I think a lot of agencies are conservative in what they project for property taxes. They say 3%, but we all know it typically comes in at 4%. So I was surprised when I saw our actuals were less than our budget. And then I went back to see, you know, was that because we were aggressive in terms of what we were projecting for the coming year? And yet it looks like we only grew by 1.2% in that area. So.
As you're referring to the actuals, correct, Blake? If I understand?
Yeah, I'm comparing 1920 actuals to 2021 projected actuals. It looks like there's only a 1.2% increase in property taxes. And so.
You're right, we are typically conservative of that, but you're also correct that it would have more than that. I don't have the previous year's budget in front of me, but we can go back and look into that and make amendments if requested.
Yeah, there seems to be something that doesn't seem to quite follow. Typically, you know, I think we all are seeing property tax year on year going up on the order of, you know, anywhere from 4 or 5%. So I am interested in making sure that's correct and getting a clarification on that. Let's see here. On table 3 on the same page, it looks like I had just a question. So we projected sewer connection fees. We estimated that we were going to bring in $1.5 million in connection fees. We actually ended up with $2.145 million, so 43% above that. I know these were just projections. I guess the question I have, and I don't know, they probably be hard to calculate it off the top of your head, but that increase in connection fees, how much of that was due to more connections than projected, and how much of that was due to the fact that we went to a scaled system and we actually saw, you know, larger houses than we expected them to be a certain size and be average at $5,000 per residential unit. And so how much of that additional revenue was actually collected because at least that year we saw larger homes come in as opposed to more homes.
And that one,
these are tough questions.
Yeah, I couldn't answer that without getting into the details of that. But I do understand. Your inquiring was it related to the quantity of the homes or the, like you said, the new resolution where we started doing that, the scaled connection.
Right.
We can look into that, sure.
We're going to slide down a number of pages to table 15, which is on 268. And let's see here. So this is, I think, going back to the ad valorem. So this one, so we're projecting our user fees to increase in 2022 over projected actuals of 5.5%. And so I was curious on the user fees. You know, we're not raising rates. So there's an assumption, I guess, that we're going to have 5.5% more users in this coming year. Was that the assumption, which seems like a large number, a large increase to be projecting over the whole district?
We did anticipate that the increase would be attributed to the new connections coming in now being subject to the sewer service charges, Blake.
But we're not raising sewer service charges, right? So the only increase in sewer service charges would be due to new services.
Correct. We'll have to go back calc that and see exactly what the anticipated growth was going to be for that.
we've seen in our district, which I think is, the district that's seen the most growth over the years, we see something closer to, 1 to 2% of additional connections year on year. And so I was, again, questioning that 5.5% increase in service charges. On this same table, you look like you're, after what I saw was a 1.2% increase in year on year property taxes, you guys are looking now at a 4%, which sounds reasonable. It's a good number, but it seemed out of whack with that other number. And so I'm, again, questioning that 3.805 million, and somewhere in there, I'd like to get some clarification on the property taxes.
Sure.
Let's see here. I think the next page, table 16. So then we've actually, even though we've got a decrease in our projected, so our 2021 projected actuals on sewer connection fees of this year of 2.145 million, but next year we're actually anticipating a decrease in connection fees. And so, again, I'm just trying to understand what the assumptions you guys make for new connections, that generate connection fees and also user fees. What was the basis of these changes in connection fees and how that relates to, again, user fees. Because it looks like in 2021, we saw a lot of new sewer connections. All right, I'm going to go now to...
I'm sorry, go ahead, Blake.
Table, I think it's 19 on the next page. 269. So this is the overall general fund summary. And what stood out to me was, if you could scroll down just a little bit further, Crystal, so we get to the bottom of the table. It seemed like the two things, we have an overall increase in our projected operating fund budget. The two ones that stood out to me were the very bottom line item, supplies, repairs, and maintenance, going up, from even last year's budget, even though we didn't spend it, from 789,000 to over $1 million. And then also the employee benefits. And I was looking for a clarification. If you could scroll up just a little bit, I think it's maybe in this one, or it's perhaps, actually, I think it's down in the top of table 20. You talk about the benefits going up because it's in the middle of that paragraph. Employee benefits as a result of amended employee benefits affected by increased HRA benefits. I'm sure CSRMA rates maybe are going up, but I don't think that they would account for a lot of it. LaRue or Crystal, could you explain what these increased employee benefits as a result of amended employee benefits affected by increased HRI benefits? My understanding is that we provided HRA benefits, but they were a cost sharing that would have overall resulted in decreases in our benefit costs as people maybe went to a lesser healthcare plan, not a increase.
Right. Just give me a second here, but Blake, I'm just looking at the numbers. Yeah, the HRAs they are addressing the cost share. So when the HRA breakdown was calculated and determined, what we did was we took the expected cost share difference from the staff providing their cost share, and we're splitting exactly like you stated. So that would be the increase there. I do have to go back and confirm to see where the savings is applied to, because there is a backdoor savings on it, like you said, for the agency for that component of it. So I do need to follow up on that and get back with you.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that there's probably going to be an increase a likely increase in healthcare costs due to higher premiums, but this is saying that the increase in the benefits is this amended employee benefits affected by the HRA benefits, which
Right.
was going to hopefully counteract that and reduce our costs.
Yeah, it should be a
not increase.
reduction. I just can't think where it's at right now. Okay.
If you want, I can also, I can talk about your question on the supplies, repairs and maintenance projects.
Okay, and I think that was the very next one, which it looked like most of that was sitting inside the maintenance department's budget, which was page 23 or table 23.
Correct. Well, we have a couple of things going on. So I'm just going to go by each department, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Let's see then. So, well, you've got engineering on here first. So in the engineering department, we have that's part of the increase. It's a minor part of the increase. And we have a project dependent and expectations to main normal project load, but also we have 50,000 roughly for PPE for COVID. And then if we go down to the maintenance department, we have the Truckee River interceptors cleaning, traffic signs, and bypass pumping supplies that are expected to hit in FY22.
Right. So I was looking for an elaboration on, that's a 300,000 plus increase over last year's budget, and
Correct.
Almost 400,000, more than $400,000 over actuals. And I guess maybe Richard, you could talk to me about those items, the cleaning. Are we bringing in an outside contractor to clean and jet the entire TRI? And is that, a multi-$100,000 project? I'm trying to figure out the source of that.
Sure, it's two increases in the maintenance budget. One being the cleaning of the TRI. We are going to bring in a contractor. We have about 6,000 feet of line that was identified via the digital scanning that has some heavy debris laying in there. It's mostly in the parallel line. So that's a large dollar amount to bring them in. It's estimated about a 3-week project to complete. The other large dollar amount that is in there is a defensible space. That's something I was going to report on as far as our first phase of it that was completed here at the plant. There's subsequent phases to get the facility defensible space where Truckee Fire would like to see us at. So that's another large dollar amount that's sitting in there this year.
And that's in the supplies, repair and maintenance, not contractual services budget?
It's the contractual services.
Okay, it's a pretty substantial increase, and
We can come back with further detail. Is it broken down in the appendix, Crystal? Because when you're talking about the contractual services for the maintenance, you're kind of doubling from what the budget was before, if not a little bit more. And I think that is applicable to the fire prevention. What you're specifically talking about, Blake, is also the substantial increase of almost double, if not more, for the supplies, repairs, and maintenance.
yeah, that's really LaRue, the one that
Right.
caught my attention. I'm just trying
Sure.
to
Let's go
understand.
to the back pages. Bear with me a second, please. So we have an allocated amount of $336,000. Is that the right one? Under supplies, repairs, and maintenance, that includes the 336 from warehouse. Richard, are those anticipated miscellaneous repairs around the plant that we kind of lump sum as a number, and then we would zero them out as the inventory comes in? Is that correct?
That's correct. I think the other reason you see the increase on the maintenance side of it is the move of IT within the maintenance. So there is some calculations that would need to be done to kind of compare what IT's was before to what we're bringing into the maintenance.
And also you have the E&I as well. As part of
Correct.
some for of $150,000. And I'm assuming too, Richard, that those are attributed to miscellaneous projects around the plant, not included in the CIP.
Correct.
If you'd like further breakdown on that, Blake, we can go break that down further and get details if we return with the amended budget.
That'd be great. I hadn't taken into consideration the inclusion of the IT into your department and how that might affect supplies, repairs and maintenance. I don't know whether, computer purchases, it's still a big number increase. And so it'd be great to get a little more detail on that. Just about at the end, thanks you guys for your patience. Table 30. Which is on 283. There we go. So this is the kind of the rolls everything up and shows the change in from beginning to ending balances for each of the funds, given the revenues and expenditures. And I guess I would like to see kind of that ending balance, a additional row that says, how does that compare to our target balances defined in our reserve policy? You had mentioned, LaRue, that I think that the general fund started at 7.9, and that was because that was the target for the beginning balance. But how we end up at the end of the year compared to it, to make sure that we've, are falling in line with things. And it put to some extent, Dave's question about the fact that we've got much more expenditures than revenue in funds 2 and 6, and therefore our reserves go down. How does that relate to our reserve targets?
Got it. Okay.
And then lastly, and this is something not for this year's budget, but I just want to put a placeholder because we're talking budget now. I would like to see in next year's budget a more extended funding forecast, like a 20-year model. It's hard to see trends and project where we're going. If we're just looking 1 year ahead, it would be nice to, I know there's a lot of assumptions that go into that, but I think it would be good to, for next year's budget, to include a longer range look on the order of like a 20-year window that might help, show us when we might be needing to do our next user fee increase or connection fee increase as we look into the future at the costs and revenues. So,
Hey, Blake, I have a question on that. I think that's a good suggestion. Again, looking at something beyond the 1 year window, I could see it being worth a future conversation by the board. Maybe sometime in the next few months, as to whether that should be a 5-year look ahead or a 20-year look ahead, and then the level of detail that goes into, because I think that could become a whole lot of work, or it could be not a whole lot of work, depending on exactly what we're looking for as a board.
yeah, I'm good with that, Dan. I think that's a good plan. It's just, I think we want to I think it's a good idea to talk about scope. So that I'm thinking more on the less side of work, a real coarse assumptions used. But once we adopt this, typically we don't talk budget again until we get the budget in front of us. And so I just wanted to get that placeholder in there. And so LaRue, I think Dan's suggestion was good, as perhaps either the full board or a committee or something like that talk about the budget. So
we can do that. I just wanted to bring to attention that we have the historical data on, when it comes to the funding and forecasting, historical data on the revenues. We can easily trend that. We recently transferred over to the new GL code, to where we've assigned further detail on where these costs are going to be, and that was just recently done. So we don't have many years of historical data to make a forecast on that. We'll just have to go back a little further and apply greater effort to break down previous budgets. But like discussed, we can have that discussion in the future.
Great. So that really concludes my comments. You know, they were pretty detailed.
Yeah.
Crystal, you know, I apologize somewhat to put you under the spot with so little under your so few days in the organization, but I appreciate you listening. And, you know, overall, again, I want to commend all the staff. I think it was actually a really well put together budget. And, you know, I wouldn't have been able to ask, I think, those good questions without the information being provided the way it was. And I thank you.
Based on the comments received, I don't recommend that we adopt this budget at this meeting right now. I think we should go back, make the amendments, fair validations, provide the requested detail, and come back at a future meeting to get adoption. So I suggest we take further comment from any boards that, if any directors that might have some, and then I can coordinate with the board of directors to see if we should come back at a special board meeting prior to July 1st, or if the preferred approval would be during the July meeting, even though the fiscal year commences July 1st. So that's my recommendation.
LaRue?
Yeah.
Can I just chime in, Mr. Shanahan? The deadline to adopt and file the budget is 60 days after the beginning of the fiscal year. So there's no need to rush this by July 1. You can just bring it back at the July board meeting if you wish.
Would that be satisfactory to the president? Thank you, Dick. Just had confirmation from President Cox that we'll come back in the July meeting. Thank you.
Okay, are there any other additions or corrections or alterations to the presented budget from any of the other directors? Go ahead, Lane.
Well, first of all, thank you, Blake. You answered every question that I had coming forward with regards to that budget. Way to break it down and looking at the different funds. You know, you always look at the projected end of the year fund balance and looking at that number at that 40,696,000 and seeing where that you know, how accurate that number is going to be by and looking at, you know, how much capital projects would have been done, and if there's money left over for projects that are on a carryover, how does that affect that bottom line number? But I just want to commend Crystal and LaRue on the work on here. It's like you said, it's very transparent, very good, good breakdown. Thank you.
Okay, I'll at this time address any concerns or comments on this budget for presentation from the public.
Unshare the screen.
We have a public comment from Pippin Mater. Go ahead, Pippin.
Great, thanks guys. Again, I appreciate the opportunity to comment. I want to echo what Blake said about the HRA, right? That was supposed to save 5%, half of your fund splitting, 5% of the 10% or whatever. And then I guess I had a couple of specific questions on table 23, and they kind of echo a little bit of what Blake was saying, but essentially when you look through that and see kind of the outliers, the higher numbers, and kind of start to wonder about them. One was utilities, right? 400% increase. I recognize it's a small number, but I still, you know, there's a bunch of ways to reduce utilities. I assume this is utilities as in electrical, natural gas, whatever. But I'm hoping that the general plan is going to include some consideration of solar or thermal from your influent, or you know, cogeneration from your digester gas. And the other one I sort of noticed was vehicles. You know, I guess it's not a huge increase, but I definitely was wondering about where I was a little surprised that that number was as high as it was, considering that COVID, there was sort of less travel and managers who have their own cars that get to use them for personal use to and from work. There was some more teleworking last year, so I'm a little bit surprised about that. And then the other one was office expenses. That's a huge increase, 300% increase. Again, I recognize it's not a huge fraction of the overall budget, but it's a big increase. And I was kind of like surprised, I guess, about that. I had heard some rumors about $10,000 conference tables. So I was kind of wondering about that. And then finally, I did want to just point out that last table, can't remember what number it is, but with that it does go from 46 million to 40 million, which is, concerning, sort of the wrong direction, or at least unless you account for the total value of it's possible that you're improving infrastructure in a way that offsets that $6 million. But that is concerning that it's going in the wrong direction. And so I'd really support both Dan and Blake, and they're looking out 5 years and 20 years. I think those are both valuable ways to kind of see where you came from and where you're going. All right, that was it. Thank you.
Thanks, Pippin. And that's all for public comment. And you're muted, LaRue.
Can we have the full screen again, please? There we go. It appears to me that we are going to postpone approval of this budget until next month, where some of the questions that Blake has brought up, along with maybe Pippin and Lane, we get a little bit of clarity on paper so that we can move the approval at next month's meeting.
Sure, I will address board of director comments in return next month.
Okay.
Yes.
So with that,
With that, President Cox, I recommend we also table resolution 921, as it is a supplemental resolution that typically accompanies the board, the budget. So I'd like to table that. And we can proceed with item 14. B14 would be the resolution 1021.
okay, at this time, we'll address item 14 in the agenda packet.
I'd move approval, Dale, of the resolution 10-2021.
Okay,
I'll second.
You fellas don't need any kind of presentation here.
It's the typical that's required annually. So it'd be typical.
State requirement.
Yeah.
Okay, with that being said, no further questions or comments from the board and the public. Seeing none and hearing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve resolution 10-2021.
So moved.
It's been moved by Lewis,
Moved by Wilkins.
seconded by Wilkins.
No, moved by Wilkins, seconded by Lewis.
Oh, I'm sorry. No further questions or comments. Roll call, please.
Dan Wilkins, or
Yes.
Director Wilkins, Director Smelser,
Yes.
Director Tresson,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
and President Cox.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Next item is item 15. Approval to reject all bids received for the 2021 Line Systems Improvement Project.
Mr. Parker, would you mind addressing the item, please?
No problem. Good morning, directors. As you know, last month we got your approval to solicit bids for the line system improvements project. So the project is preferred by staff because it reduces continued maintenance on the current pneumatic line conveyance system. But I did want to emphasize it's not required for continued operation. Our existing system is still working. 2 bids were received for the project on May 27th. One was milling machinery for $339,667. The second was KG Walters, who's our headworks contractor at the moment for 377,800. I did want to mention that both of those bid prices are significantly greater than the budgeted amount of 150,000 and the engineer's estimate of 130,000. And what we believe from the bid review and analysis is that this is due to recent increased material and labor costs. So upon the sticker shock of getting those numbers and comparing with the budget, we met as a management team, and we did determine that since there's no pressing need to get this job complete now, that it may be beneficial to postpone or re-advertise at a future date to try to get a lower price. Agency Ordinance 3-2015 affords the Board of Directors to reject all bids and not proceed with the contract. The fiscal impact of doing that would be simply a re-advertising of the project in the future. The project is complete in terms of design, so we could just simply shelve that. So the recommendation is for management and staff recommend rejecting all bids received for the 2021 Lime System Improvements Project.
Jay, is there anything out there that with the existing transport system for the line that can be improved that we have? I mean, have you guys looked at that?
So that existing system was installed in 04, and through, I'd say, several years of what I'd call hiccups, we improved that system in-house with our own expertise, and got it into a situation that's considered stable. It still has headaches associated with it, but we do have it in a sustainable state. The issue is that spare parts may end up becoming difficult to get a hold of. It isn't like we could then, we may be able to adapt and use different parts in those areas. But it's not like the existing system right now is like on its last legs. There's staff here that don't like it. So that the main motivation here was a staff driver to go with the new system. Does that answer your question at all?
Yeah, I mean, what are the, I mean, obviously we're not the only ones that have this issue, correct? I mean, some of the other districts, with line transport, I guess beyond going to the full, for what was bid out, it comes up twice of what the engineer's estimate is, that we can live with it for the short term.
Yeah, so lime use in treatment plants, especially wastewater treatment plants, is fairly rare. It's not like it's done all over the place. We did during design, when we were looking at options back, I'd say in maybe the 07-08 timeframe, we visited a couple plants in Northern California that were using lime, and we were looking into ways, what were they doing, and can we take any lessons learned from them and apply it to us. What we found is what they were using had their own sets of headaches and problems. Plus, they were a lot more expensive than what we're contemplating looking at with this project. And at the bid price of 150, it was a palatable project to try something different. At nearly 350,000, we would be kind of taking some risk in terms of is the new system going to be that much better than the old system for that price? So there's that consideration as well. Michael, do you have anything you want to add on to that?
You covered it pretty well. We have done improvements over the years to the system, and I think we've improved as much as we can. on the existing system. And it is problematic and time consuming for staff. We could have them utilized to do other things. We were hoping to get a system that would reduce that, those time restrictions that were time consumption of staff, that to keep lines cleared and to fix broken parts on the older system would kind of offset that cost of the 150,000. But at the double the price, you know, again, with the system at least being functional now, and we have a backup redundant system, we have 2 of them, that we think we could push this out and come back at another time and hopefully come back in closer to that original estimate of what the cost would be for this system.
Okay, Jay, and Mike, what do you feel would be an acceptable time frame to push this reintroduction back? How long are we talking?
Well, I wish I could give you the great answer on that, because then I'd make my billions of dollars here in the market. But it's you know, what I'm hearing is that this is all COVID related. The subs are having difficult finding labor, and the material costs are being driven up because factories are either closed or behind due to COVID. So the fact that it's COVID related, you know, I think our hope is we're all heading out of the woods on that one. There's, even with, if COVID was to stop tomorrow magically, you know, that you would have some time where the market has to readjust. I don't know the right answer on that. I would think you'd want to wait at least a year as a guess.
And is the operators prepared to continue dealing with this this ongoing problem?
For the next 12 months, yes.
Yes.
Blake had a comment.
Okay, go ahead, Blake.
I was just gonna, you know, thank Jay and Mike, you know, for you know, being good stewards of the public money and recognizing, you know, I think you know that if you told us you needed this done, you know, there's a good likelihood we would, even with the high prices, you know, we need to achieve our mission there, but recognizing that, you know, not everything is of equal importance, and that we can, you know, hopefully wait out this kind of inflationary situation we're in and get this project, which sounds like a good one, done for the right price. And so I just thanks you guys for, you know, I know there's a lot of vested work that went into designing it and putting the bids out, and there's a desire to follow through on that. And so the fact that you guys are actually recommending we reject it means a lot. And I'll make a motion to reject all bids for the 2021 line system improvement project.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor by Blake. We need a second to.
Second.
Been seconded by Director Lewis. No further questions or comments from the board. Any comments from the public?
No public comment.
Okay, with that being said, roll call, please.
Director Wilkins,
Yes.
Director Smelser,
Yes.
Director Tresson,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
and President Cox.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Next item is item 16, approval of the MOU for the digital, whatever you call it. Help me out with this, Lou.
Sure. This is item 16 as it relates to getting the digital photography for our GIS system. Jay Parker, would you mind addressing this as well, sir?
Yep, no problem. So it's LiDAR, Dale, and it stands for light detection and ranging. So it's my understanding, it's a combination of aerial photography and radar work, how light reflects off landforms, et cetera, to basically give really detailed aerial mapping and land geomorphology. So like what, you know, that's the right term, the surface features of the land, kind of if you were to pretend the trees weren't there, you know, and look at look at what the land surface does. So this is a project that has been done over, there's been at least a couple iterations over the years, and there's been a consortium of local agencies that have partnered on this, including North Tahoe, North Star, Tahoe City, Truckee Donner, PD, TSD, and the airport. And we've had made some decisions, or the TTSA as a body have made decisions in the past not to participate and we are interested. We are very interested in participating in this. We think it would have great benefit not only to GIS but for other figures that we might prepare, or just really detailed information about all of our service areas for those districts that are participating. And the cost, there's a cost sharing agreement where basically how much use you're going to have of the total area mapped determines the percent that your agency would contribute to the project. So we worked with Drew Jack of the town of Truckee. Dan, he was very helpful. Thank you. So he basically worked with all the other partners to determine what was fair and equitable for TTSA, and what was fair and equitable for all the other partnering agencies to make sure that everybody's kind of paying their fair share. So the cost of the project would be spent amongst all the participating member agencies. The fiscal impact to TTSA would be $27,758.04. There is an attached MOU that's been drafted for the participating agencies that if the board were to approve, that we would want to sign. So management and staff recommend approval of the MOU for the digital orthophotography and LiDAR data for the Truckee North Tahoe region.
Okay, any questions or comments from the board towards Jay on approval of this agenda item?
Just one, Dick, my employer is the town of Truckee, who's one of the parties to this agreement, but I don't believe I have any conflict of interest.
I agree.
Thanks.
Okay, any comments from the public?
I don't see any.
Not seeing any?
No, sir.
I'll make a motion to approve entering in the MOU for the LiDAR and aerial photography project.
Okay, need a second.
I'll second.
It's been seconded by Smeltzer, moved by Director Treason. And if there's no further questions or comments, roll call, please.
Director Wilkins,
Yes.
Director Smelser,
Yes.
Director Tresson,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
and President Cox.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Next item is exhibit number 17. This is a resolution commending Tristan Simmons for his dedicated service to the agency.
Yes, President Cox, as informed in the beginning of the meeting, we have two retirees in which I both feel warrant and deserve commendament from the board of directors and the agency. The first is Tristan Simmons. Like initially stated, he's been here 20 years. He's done a standing service with us. He started his career as a wastewater treatment plant and has progressed through the succession of the classifications and moved forward there. He's been with the agency long enough to where he's seen the many growths. The Truckee expansion of the plant was an active participant to make sure that we could troubleshoot and bring on the BNR system. And I've never worked with him personally, directly, but I've been informed that he's been very reliable and dependable whenever performing his tasks. And the recommendation is that we approve Resolution 11-2021, commending Tristan for his dedication and service to the agency.
Comments from the board? Seeing that right now. Don't go ahead, Blake.
I was just clapping.
Okay. Any comments from the public?
No, sir.
No comments?
No.
Okay, then with that, I'd like a motion to approve resolution 11-2021, please.
I'll make that motion to approve that resolution 11/2021.
And we need a second.
Second.
Seconded by Director Wilkins. No further questions or comments. Roll call, please.
Director Wilkins,
Yes.
Director Smelser,
Yes.
Director Tresson,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
and President Cox.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Moving along.
Item 18, this is another resolution for dedication of service for Bob Gray. Again, that was discussed early in the meeting. I have had the opportunity to work with Bob single-handedly, so I was able to provide more input on this one. Bob has been here for 22 years, provided loyal, dedicated service to the agency. I know he's been a very integral part in building and incorporating our SCADA system and our plant information system. As I understand it, when the BNR system came online, there were options to outsource that. Bob volunteered to go ahead and do that internally, save the agency some money. Did so, it's done a very good system, to which we still use today. So there's a lot of effort there. And he's also been very instrumental in maintaining the cybersecurity of the agency facilities. As stated, there's always attacks. There's been attacks for past years. He's been instrumental and the one that's responsible for making sure that we maintain our files safely. So again, we have a approval here for resolution 12/2021, commending Bob for his dedicated service to the agency. I do recommend that. And speaking on a side note, like I said, I've worked with Bob as part of the management team. I found him very valuable. He was able to bring organizational skills to us, big picture skills, make sure that sometimes he would make sure that we would see all sides to a situation to evaluate things, but we found very valuable. So with that, I do commend the adoption of resolution 12/2021.
Okay, any comments from the board? I got a comment. Bob, I'm gonna miss seeing you on the management reports. You've been a fixture for as long as I've been a director, and I just want to let you know that I really appreciate your dedication and your service to the agency. And once again, I'm going to miss seeing you in the lineup.
I'll second that.
Okay, any questions or comments from the public?
No public comment.
Need a motion to approve.
I'll make the motion for approval.
Okay, it's been moved by Director Lewis. Need a second.
I'll second.
Second. Oh,
And it's
Smeltzer.
seconded by Director Smeltzer. No further comments. Roll call, please.
Director Wilkins. I got it.
Yes.
Director Smelser,
Yes.
Director Tresson,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
and President Cox.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Okay, let's go along to the management team reports.
Mr. Peak.
Go ahead, Michael.
Good morning, President Cox, Board of Directors. The operations report for the month of May. All plant waste discharge requirements were met for the month. In the operations department, overall, the plant performed well through the month. For the month, we continue to collaborate with maintenance and engineering departments on plant improvement projects that we have ongoing. Well 31 pH ranged between 6.6 and 6.7 for the month. The operations department continues to add caustic to the effluent at a pH set point of 7.0. In the laboratory, staff perform necessary laboratory testing per WDR requirements and operational needs for the month. Significant SOP revisions are proceeding. Coordinating with a third-party assessment services for our assessment coming up. 50% of the designated operations staff have completed the required demonstration of capability for required weekend testing. And staff continue to train remaining operators for the weekend testing and will be completing those DOCs. The new laboratory director, Jason, continues to assess lab testing and evaluating administrative and analytical laboratory SOP needs. Work orders for the month, we have completed 3 and we have 3 pending. Are there any questions for the operations department report?
Board members?
Mike, what is the coordinating third-party assessment services?
Actually, Jason, do you want to elaborate on that? If it's okay, I'd have Jason, the laboratory director, elaborate on exactly what he's going to be bringing in to make sure that we have our assessment completed for our ELAP certification. Jason, can you unmute yourself? And show you, there you go.
Yeah, I made it. So yeah, the third-party assessment essentially is service that ELAP used to perform, still does perform, but their scheduling makes it very difficult. It's the assessment of the laboratory required for our every 2-year certification. The state has approved a handful of companies that are qualified to do that assessment in the name of the state. And the costs are very comparable. In fact, in this case, the state would charge us a flat rate of $5,000 for this assessment. We're getting quotes slightly below that. So it's actually turned out to be a little cheaper using a third-party assessor. So at this point, I'm on the schedule to resubmit an application for laboratory certification at the end of December. And with that application package, I have to include a completed assessment and corrective action for any associated findings. And then we'll submit our normal stuff along with that. So the timing on this is pretty critical at this point. We don't have a ton of wiggle room. So the third-party assessor will also give us the opportunity to schedule a little quicker, and they're a little bit more customer service oriented than the state has been in the past. So I've gotten indications that we should have no problem getting an assessor in the building by September, completing it, getting it all done, getting everything out, and having a completed package for submission to the state in December.
Hey, Jason, will you also explain a little bit what the assessors are going to be doing for us?
Oh yeah, sure. So the assessors essentially come in and they make sure that the methods that you are requesting certification for, to make sure that you're following them, make sure that your SOPs reflect the source material accurately, and make sure that you are following your own SOPs and adequately documenting any QC practices required, anything you say. The basic adage is do what you say what you do. So they're going to come in and make sure that that's the case. And if they find an instance where there is something missing or something reflected poorly in one of our SOPs, they'll call it out as a finding, and their obligation is to identify the exact point in regulation where we are not meeting the requirements. And so every finding will have an associated link to any kind of regulation or source material. And then they'll work with us to create corrective actions wherever necessary. And then we kind of set up a system by which the next time an assessor shows up, the first thing they'll do is look at that corrective action and make sure that we've completed it, make sure that we're actually on the right track still.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Jason. Just to clarify, this is a biannual, every 2 years, required of all state certified labs. This isn't something that came out of the NOV.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Jason.
Okay, anything else, Michael?
That's it for the department report for operations and lab.
Okay, thank you very much. What's up there, Richard?
Morning, President Cox and Board of Directors. So maintenance for the month of May continued to assist engineering and operations on ongoing projects. We had a rapid tear down for secondary 2 for the coding project. We began some shop relocation with the move of IT down to maintenance to provide the IT SCADA guys a workroom of their own, and then readjusting the workshops for the mechanical and the electrical and instrumentation guys. With the summer months coming on, we've had an increase in TRI dig alert marking, so that's been taking some time. We also completed our annual spring TRI inspection. We only found some minor brush removal we need to do and some minor manhole riser repairs we need to do. The other big project for the month was the defensible space that I mentioned during the budget conversations. So phase 1's been completed. That included the area between the Truckee River and the administration building. So phase 2 will be more sagebrush mastication that'll go to the plant north along the river and in areas out in front of AWT, and that's scheduled for August. Again, that'll help us get in compliance with where the Truckee Fire Department like to see us. We're also doing some of the roads that go out to the wells in doing some widening there that they like to see, which will help them in the event of a fire have good access to that area. With that, we completed 42 mechanical work orders, 4 in fleet, 41 in E&I. We still have an outstanding number of 108 for mechanical, 32 in fleet, and 49 for instrumentation, electrical and instrumentation. Any questions or comments?
Yes, Richard, I got a question the director wanted information on. When was the last time the flow meter at Dollar Hill and Rampart were calibrated?
In April of this year, we did all of the flow meters. We had Utility Systems Science and Software, also known as USQ. That's a third-party vendor we bring in. They came on site and calibrated all the flow meters. So Dollar Hill was done in April of this year, as well as Rampart.
Great, thank you.
And just to note, there was no adjustments needed to that flow meter. So it was, had been and continues to provide reliable flow numbers.
Okay, thank you.
Richard, thanks for the pictures. The defensible space work looks great. Was that done in-house or is that a contractor that you brought in?
We brought in a contractor because we also included some tree removal for the chiller project. And then we had, unfortunately, a large leaner towards the O2 basins that was well out of our expertise to be able to drop. So they came in and did that as part of that. And the follow-up work will be another contractor. All of them are ones that were recommended by or on the approved vendor list, I'll say, for Truckee Fire.
Thanks.
Any questions? What's up, Jay?
Good morning again. On the engineering report, there's about a dozen projects, some that we're continuing to work on from past projects. We do have 3 projects that are currently underway and under construction. One is the Headworks Improvements Project, that's well underway. The chiller replacement project, which was completed last week and is in the punch list phase. And then the plant painting project, which started about a month ago. And then, as you can see on the report, we're starting to roll in some of the 2022 design projects. Are there any questions about any of the projects I list there?
Seeing none, hearing none.
I think Blake, you're muted, Blake.
Blake, I'm sorry.
All right, I was muted, my bad. Jay, I don't know whether it's a project or not, or whether you were going to address it. You included a map in your report of the TRI, and just wondering what it's a nice looking map, what the, whether there was a backstory behind that.
Yeah, I apologize. I should have mentioned that. Lane at the last meeting had requested a figure that showed the diameters and the various reaches along the TRI. So hopefully, Lane, that suffices for what you're looking
Yeah, no, I mean, this is very detailed. It's great. Just to look at it and look at the, assess the TRI where our pinch points are. Because I've never seen it before, so it looks great.
Yeah, now just as a caution, because of the hydraulics of the TRI. Just because it's a smaller diameter doesn't mean it's a pinch point. So when the pitch of the pipe is able to be steep,
Greater slope.
you can greater slope, you can reduce the diameter of your pipe. Yeah, the caution is not to go to that map and look for all the smaller numbers and think that's a pinch point, because often it's not.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, sure.
Yep, nice map. I noticed that you included a fairly large area in the Martis Valley that you include as TSD and NCSD agency overlap, which is accurate just for the other board members or any staff or public that's looking. TSD serves sewer for all that area from, the TTSA perspective. That overlap area, TSD provides sewer, NCSD provides water. That's the overlap there. It's not both of us providing sewer in that zone.
Okay, any other questions for Jay? Bob, this is going to be your final presentation to the board. Don't shed a tear here for me.
Good morning, directors. For the past month, the staff members of the IT department have been transitioning to their new roles under the E&I department. Staff has been relocated to the maintenance department office, and they've been settled in for a couple of weeks now. We are continuing with the transfer of all account information and should be complete by the end of the month. Of major notes, with work on the plant, the IT department has completed the integration of all the methanol dosing pumps. Assisting E&I, they've added the test Fluidar system onto SCADA. The IT staff are also in preliminary talks with the past vendor for upgrading our aging telephone system. As my time is winding down here at TTSA, I would like to take a moment to thank the friends and staff here for 22 years of service and a great career. Kevin Woods and I have been working together for almost 19 years. And together we've built an IT system from very humble beginnings that has served this plant well and its staff too. I thank you, Kevin, for all of your hard work and collaboration over the years. I've only had the pleasure of working with Luke Swan for a few months now, during these rather interesting times of late. From this limited time working with Luke, I know from his work ethic and kind personality that he is a valuable asset to TTSA. And I thank you, Luke, for joining the team and making TTSA a better place. I want to thank the management team that I've had the honor of working with for the past 6 years or so. Michael Peak, your dedication to the plant and your fairness to your employees make you a strong leader and an enviable manager. It's been wonderful working with you for 22 years, and thank you. Jay Parker, your work speaks for itself, and you provided TTSA through your dedication, knowledge, and skill in your profession many advancements and successes. When working together, you've always provided well thought out and valuable suggestions and solutions that made our projects a success. Here again, I thank you. I've only worked with Richard Palante for a few years. However, in that time, you've made the maintenance department a great one. I thank you for being such a capable, reasonable, and valued member of the management team. And I thank you, LaRue, for providing a steady hand of leadership and management over the past 5 to 6 years. Your job has not been an easy one, but you've kept this plan on track and moving forward. I appreciate and thank you for the time working with you. And a very special thanks to all the employees that I haven't mentioned and may have not have worked directly with. However, I'm fortunate to call people in many different departments friends of mine. The employees here, present and past, make up the soul of the agency that I've appreciated all my years here for their friendship and support. And finally, I thank you, members of the board, for providing a strong backbone to TTSA. You've done a wonderful job balancing the needs and wants of the staff through your care and compassion with obligations and duties to the service of our customers and community. I think I can speak for many of us when I say we've always felt supported by you with having our best interests in heart and mind. I thank you for that and helping to make this agency an asset and provider to our community and employees. Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you very much, Bob, and good luck in your retirement.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Okay, the next report comes from Crystal. Crystal, are you ready to Us again?
I feel like I've been talking a majority of the meeting. Am I on mute? No, okay. Sorry. So I just want to first point out that the number for total relief under the billing customer service of $218,216 is actually $205,000. Just to make a note of that. The accounting team, who are diligently waiting for time with me, have completed the monthly AP, AR, payroll, and general ledger, all the month-end processes. We're going to be doing, I guess, year-end next or very soon, and assisted with all of the questions that LaRue and I had, and probably the other management staff had for them for the budget preparation. Billing and customer service, just the general assistance with customer accounts, utility demands, adjustments, activated new accounts, received and applied. We're still receiving applications for the COVID-19 relief program. We received 25 in May and approved 20. And then we have 5 pending for revision, and total relief in May is $18,443. And then, as I said, the total relief in total is $205,000. And then just the general administration of coordinating purchase of plant O&M supplies, and with all departments for their contracts and bids and purchase orders. And that is all I have to add until next month, I guess.
Any questions for Crystal? Seeing none, hearing none. Welcome aboard, Crystal. You've knocked it out of the park on the first board meeting.
Thank you. I had a lot of support and help.
Thank you very much. Okay, moving along to the manager's report.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a couple things to here. Firstly, the assistant associate engineer, it is in the recruitment phase, and we actually have pending interviews coming up in the next week or so. And our CMS GIS technician has accepted our offer of employment, and she is expected to begin employment in early July. So we look forward to those additions to the team. I also wanted to name out the people who assist us with the budget. It's very easy to put them on print, but I wanted to make sure everybody was aware of who these individuals were that assist with the budget and provided their efforts into it. So in addition to the managers, I wanted to let the board be aware of the fact that we had Michelle Mackey, the accounting supervisor, provide a lot of input on that. She did a lot of data research, trendings, forecasting. She was invaluable in the process. Mike Smith, who is the safety officer, he has his own sub-department, is the lone individual in that department, so he's had to take on that role with Jay's participation assistance as well. And it's just Michael Peak, you have Greg O'Hare and Jason Hayes. Greg is the CPO, as you know, and Jason is the laboratory director. As being the sub-departments on there, they were able to assist Michael in the process, which it was also valuable. And Richard Palante's team of Paul Schaus, Tanner McGinnis, and Kevin Woods, they were invaluable because we were now incorporating the IT. So I just didn't want it to go as just names on the budget. I just wanted to bring recognition to them there, and I thank them for their efforts there. And then again, Celeste for continuing to do the relief program and take on the tax roll billing by herself, which is a big task upon itself. So I wanted to acknowledge her efforts there. With that, I have no additional information, and you can take questions from the board.
Any questions for LaRue? Seeing none and hearing none. Director's comments. Go ahead, David.
I was just a question about timing. We talked about computer hacking into the system, which is pretty unlikely for us because we're small potatoes. But if it ever happened, what kind of timing do we have if they shut us down somehow? What, I guess that's a question for Michael. If we got shut down.
Hey, actually, Michael, can we defer that to you, Bob? Since we're still under the current IT program?
Yeah, absolutely. Director Smulders, it's a little bit of a vague question when you say the ability to shut us down. If we're talking about our automation equipment getting hacked and code being changed around and things like that, we do have backups that that can be re-implemented within within an hour or so, and then and through the development of our system here, operations, even though it may not be convenient, but they are able to operate the major parts of the plant in a manual mode away from if the automation equipment were to fail.
Uh-huh. So it's not such a big consideration for what we were talking about earlier with the IT side. Not such a big worry as I had thought.
And if I may, we do have emergency, maybe your question was also related to how much time do we have as far as storage capacity to handle the raw influent? We have about 23 million gallons of capacity. So depending on what our influent flow was, it would vary based on that. But we do have emergency bypass areas that we can store and then treat the water at a later time.
Director Lewis.
No comment. Well, I do have a comment. I mean, the heartfelt message of that Bob, I hadn't had the opportunity to be a close friendship as far as, being with you for such a, I've been here almost 30 years, and to see an employee such as yourself leave always saddens my heart. But, I just want to say thank you for your dedication, for your service, and just the graciousness that you handle yourself in all the instances at TTSA. You've been an asset and a valuable member in the community. Can't thank you enough. Thank you.
Okay, Blake, any comments?
I'll second Lane's comments and also just say that, we're going into the summer season, and the local public utility electricity providers are warning about, these planned extended shutdowns. And it was good to see, I think both Mike and Richard, you guys were at the meeting that PUD put on, and I'm glad to see you guys at the table there, and, hopefully making whatever plans necessary should we see potentially a long-term shutdown of power this summer to avoid, the fires. So good job.
Okay, Dan, comments?
I'd just like to say thank you to Bob and thank you to Tristan, and wish you guys luck in retirement.
Very good. I got one final comment, and this is something that that I brought up a year or so ago. And after the destruction of our curb appeal by the roofers, when they redid the roof, they left our front appearance in shambles. And Richard, you and I and LaRue had discussed kind of bringing up the curb appeal on when you drive up to the front of our organization. Are we planning to move ahead? I know you pulled out a lot of the shrubbery and a lot of the old growth that was obstructing some of the views out the window. And are we going to be moving ahead with the irrigation and landscaping here?
Yeah, yes, we are. The architect is currently in design for the landscape design and irrigation design, and they're due to have that to us by the end of this month. So and once we got that, was to review it, bring it to the board for possible review, and then move it forward as far as deciding whether we're going to be able to do it in-house or would we want to bring in a landscape contractor to do the work.
Okay, thank you, Richard. I believe that that's pretty much it for the regular agenda. And what I'd like to do is have a motion to move to closed session.
I'll make that motion to move to
It's
closed
been
session.
moved by Director Lewis, need a second?
Second by Schmelzer.
Seconded by Schmelzer. Roll call, please.
Director Wilkins,
Yes.
Director Smelser,
Yes.
Director Tresson,
Yeah.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
and President Cox.
Yes.